Off the ball. This is News Talk.
Hello there, you're very welcome along. So forevermore, Kellie Harrington is now Olympic gold medalist. Kellie Harrington, which has a nice ring to it, I think you'll agree. A landmark morning for Irish sport, a career-defining performance in Tokyo, and beautiful, joyous scenes in Portland Row as well at the Harrington household. Few happy tears, I would suspect, across the country. It's lovely to have you with us here and Off the Ball on this Sunday afternoon. Joe Molloy here. Neil Tracy is alongside me. Do get in touch, 53106. At Off the Ball on Twitter is the place to go. There is, of course, an All-Ireland hurling semi-final later on today. And we're going to chat with Tommy Welch at Croke Park. We'll be chatting through the Sunday papers as well with Katie Liston and Rory O'Connor, but that's for later on. We have much to reflect on after this morning. Michael Carruth is going to join us on this very day in '92. He won a gold medal in the ring. Kieran Cunningham of the Irish Daily Star will join us as well. So let's jump in. Loads to get through, loads of reaction from Portland Road to bring you. We might just start with the main lady herself, though, woman of the hour, woman of the morning. This is Kellie Harrington speaking to Joe Stack. This was in the moments after the fight and after the win, speaking to Joe Stack and RTE this morning. Here's Kellie Harrington.
I feel relief. You know, we're all champions. Anyone who steps in between those ropes are champions. I've had every fight has been a tough fight. Every fight has been a gold medal fight. Whew, it's just fantastic, you know. I just can't wait to get back home, sit on my couch, to sleep, to rest. I'm absolutely exhausted, to be honest. I mean, I'm like a fluffy pigeon going around on that grey at this stage. I am. What a journey, and it's just fantastic, you know, absolutely fantastic.
You said the final mile is rarely crowded. The final mile was crowded today, Kellie, because the entire country was in your corner. What do you want to say to them back home?
You know, there's been times in my career when people say the whole country is behind you. This time, I really, really feel the whole country is behind me. And you know, people might say, oh, that's a pressure. You might feel like you have a big weight on your shoulders, you know, like, but I actually really didn't, because I knew no matter what happened out here today, whether it was gold or silver or whatever, I knew I've made myself proud, and I know I've made the people of Ireland proud, regardless of the colour of the medal. Just, you know, just being here and putting our little nation on the map, it's just, you know, this is the stuff of dreams.
Yeah, it sure is. Kellie Harrington this morning, they're speaking to Joe Stack, and our Olympics coverage here in OTB Sports, by the way, is with thanks to Indeed, proud partner of Team Ireland. Indeed believes the world works better when people are given every opportunity to unleash their true talents. The hashtag is Talent Unleashed. Now, we'll bring you some reaction from Portland Row, but first we're going to go live, I suspect, to Portland Row as well. Joel Harrington, brother of Kellie, is with us on the line. Joel, can you hear us there?
We can, yeah.
Super. Listen, thanks so much for joining us. I'm sure it's been an unbelievable morning. Are you still at the house, or have you gone elsewhere, or what's been the last, I don't know, 6-7 hours like for you?
No, I'm still at the house. It's crazy. Starting to get all the people in now from the match. So we've Cork, Limerick, everybody's knocking in. It's just incredible. It really is. Like, it's surreal to see the amount of people that this has brought a smile to their face, and it's why Kellie does it.
I was driving by myself this morning. It seems anyone going by is beeping a horn.
Yeah, it's like if you don't beep your horn, you'd be pulled over. It's absolutely crazy. Just people are beeping the horns non-stop. When you look in the cars and they beep the horns, they're grinning ear to ear. It's just giving everybody a lift right at the time, and it's probably been needed most. I think it's fair to say it's been fairly gloomy, not just in Ireland, but across the world, with COVID and stuff, the last year and a half. And this is just, that's forgotten about for now, and it's brilliant. I think everybody's just living in the moment. So
they erected a big screen at the bottom of the street for people to come and watch the fight there this morning. And then I was watching on the TV coverage as soon as the fight was over. I mean, it was like Black Friday, where they have a big sale and they open the door and everybody starts running. So everybody legs it up from the big screen to your house, and you start running out of the house, and there's champagne going, and I think your brother has your mum up on his back, and he's jumping around, and you're somewhere in the middle of it as well, and your dad's trying to get the champagne open, and God, it was just magic. And I presume they're all familiar faces that were running up to you, probably friends and neighbours and well-wishers. Yeah,
that's exactly it. We didn't want to have, a screen in terms of like having the road closed down or anything like that, because we wanted it to be tight knit. So that the screen that was up the road was perfect. It was small enough. It was just the community, and then it was just, as you said, if you were there yourself, it was just magic. All familiar faces, all people who live on the road, surrounding areas, and just everyone just soaking in the moment. It was just unbelievable. Yeah. What was on your front door over the doorbell? There was some kind of poster up with some writing. I was pressing pause on the TV this morning trying to see what was written there. It was just basically asking for like a little bit of privacy in terms of the actual fight, because on the last fight we had, just while the fight was going on, there was actually a lot of people knocking and so on and so forth. Yeah. So for this one, we just wanted to watch it, just literally for those 9 minutes, and then we were fine to open the door or whatever. But just for those 9 minutes, we just wanted to, I suppose, enjoy the fight. That must be pretty close to the greatest moment of your life, I would think, when you're all jumping around in those few seconds afterwards. The greatest. Nothing comes close to that. Seeing your sister achieve what we've always wanted her to achieve as a family. We've always supported her. We've always known she could do it. Hands down the greatest moment of my life, and nothing even comes remotely close to it, Yeah. Just a very, very special moment. Yeah, I can only imagine. Joel, stay with us. So I want to give you a sense, and the listeners, I'm sure they've had a sense already of the immediate moments after the results. So our reporter Aisling O'Reilly was one of those many outside your house this morning and jumping around and trying to speak to different people. So we have you'll probably recognise the voices here, some of your neighbours. And so Aisling was talking to people who had gathered to watch the fight and wanted to come and congratulate the Harrington family. So just have a listen. This is Aisling O'Reilly speaking to, I guess, some of the Harrington neighbours nearby.
She's a hero, Kelly. You done it. Thank God, and thank our lady and all your good neighbours and friends. 3 cheers for Kelly.
What would you like to say to Kelly?
Just congratulations from all the Portland Road, Portland Close and the community. And we're proud of her. She had the gold and she brought the gold home. So we're looking forward to coming home on Tuesday, and the reception will be fantastic. And please God that all the children in the area will take note of it and they grow up to be like her. And she's a fine example for coming from Portland Row and the Portland Row area. So from all the neighbourhood and myself, congratulations, Kelly. Well done.
Yeah, so proud of you, Kelly. Literally so proud of you, honey. From all the Portland Row, we all love you.
What does it mean to everybody here today?
Ecstatic. There's no feeling in the world like it.
Have you ever seen scenes like this here?
No, never. Brilliant. Yeah. She's a gem. She's one of a kind. She's a gem.
And during lockdown, we've seen her out doing all the exercise and all.
Yeah, everything. Running up and down and all the kids, everything. She's brilliant. I have to tell you, I went to Mass yesterday evening and I asked Jesus to keep giving her that strength, because we knew she had a win and we knew she would have. But you always have to have that little book. And I'm after crying down there watching her. I'm after crying.
And what would you like to say to Kelly?
Fair play to you, honey.
Oh,
You've done a great job, and you're proud. Portland Road is proud of you.
You're one of us.
And always will be.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Absolutely amazing. Joel Harrington is still with us, Kelly's brother. There's a lot of love around Portland Road. That's a tight-knit community. Are you there, Joel?
Sorry, still here. Sorry, people are just knocking at the door. Sorry, say again.
Well, just listening to those neighbours there and those friends, you get a real sense of the community. There's a lot of love around Portland Row.
it's incredible, and that's what Kelly feeds off. That's what we've just been given a snippet of it, throughout. Just whenever we spoke to her, just kind of telling her little bits here and there, not too much now, so that she feels like crowded or whatever, but just snippets, and that's what she feels off. She said, like as she said in her last interview, she really, it wasn't the pressure. It was just she felt support as opposed to pressure, and it means the world to her. It means the world to all of us as a family, really.
You'd have a very real sense of what she's gone through to get here. Like even just, I don't know, going back, say, to the World Championships of 2016, which is not long ago, like Kellie was not receiving any funding or grant. She was kind of juggling part-time work, or sometimes, I think ahead of the World Championships, she had to cut back in her hours, and there was, you're working off social welfare, and she was trying to save a kitty to... I was reading Dennis Walsh today in the Sunday Times, and she spent it all on food out in Kazakhstan because she didn't like the food, and she, gets a silver medal there and starts getting funding, and it gets a bit easier. But we probably all from the outside underestimate the journey that she's been on and just how difficult it's been to get where she is this evening.
Yeah, Kellie has been given absolutely nothing. Like everything she has, she's worked for and had to grind for, and she's had to work and get every single ounce of talent out of her, and she squeezed that out of herself. It wasn't easy for her. There was, as you said, like rightly so, there was countless times when Kellie would look for some kind of support, whether that's with inboxing or whether that's through sponsorships and just different types of things. And she had to kind of break down barriers and just kind of force openings for herself and force opportunities for herself. And she just wasn't going to be denied on what she wanted from her career. I think when she got, a lot of that was vindicated when she won the Worlds in 2018. But this is just the cherry on the cake. This is on another level again, this is forever. This is eternal.
Well, I just said at the top of the show, I mean, she's no longer Kellie Harrington. She's Olympic gold medalist Kellie Harrington for the rest of her life. That's how big it is. Exactly,
yeah. She's just she's a sporting icon in the country, which is very weird to say because she's my sister, but it's the case. I don't think that'll ever get normal, but it's just absolutely insane. It's not been, Kellie hasn't had a rapid ascent. She's had to work for everything she has, and this is a process that took 15, 16 years. Yes. And she's earned every single thing that she has, and anything that she gets coming to her in the future, she deserves every single bit of it.
So Joel, give us the sense in the house then this morning. You've got the big screen erected at the bottom of the street. You've maybe 10 minutes before the fight or so. I don't know, did what time you're up at? So at what stage does your mum tend to head out to the back garden? I feel sorry for your mum out in the back garden, pacing it, waiting to hear what's happened. You and the brother and your dad are obviously just sitting around. Give us a sense of what it was like in the moments building up to the fight. Was it loud? Was it quiet? Were you all a bit nervous? Were you talking or not talking?
It's like every fight, you could hear a pin drop. So I tried to sleep last night, but didn't really sleep much. So I got up at around 4:45.
Right.
And everybody was up at that stage.
Right.
And my ma was already out the back. So she must have been cold when the fight was over, mind you. But you could have heard a pin drop. It was tense. It was fairly tense in the house. But I actually think the closer it got to the fight and the closer it got to the opening bell, the more relaxed we were. Kellie's ability in the ring, we just we don't have a lack of belief in Kellie. We know that she knows what she's doing, and we trust in her. We trust in our coaches, our club coach Noel, our high performance coaches, and we trust that they'll do the business.
And so, just to set the context for people who mightn't be aware, in Beatriz Ferreira, the Beast as she's known, which would give you a sense of things, she is the 2019 world champion. Kellie is the 2018 world champion, didn't get to defend her title because she was injured the following year. So this was the first meeting of the reigning champion and the champion of the previous year. And everybody was expecting this to be a close and difficult fight. Round one, Kellie's 3-2 down. Generally the way it's gone in these games and beyond, you lose the first round, momentum's against you, you have to chase it a bit, the judges tend to favour the fighters who is in the ascendancy. That's a tricky spot in an Olympic final to be down the first round. What did you make of the opening couple of minutes?
I thought the Brazilian girl won the first maybe 30 to 45 seconds of the fight. And then Kelly, I think, got into her rhythm, and that was it, really. I suppose in the nicest possible way. If you let Kelly get into a rhythm, you can't get her out of that rhythm. And I think that the last 2 rounds say it all. She won the last 2 rounds on every judge's scorecard and got a unanimous decision. So every judge gave her the obviously the decision. And I think that might, obviously with the achievement, that actual sporting achievement and the merit with that might be overlooked, because that's no mean feat. Like, to beat a girl like her, who's been so dominant and so aggressive in fights, it's nothing to kind of turn your nose up at. That's a big achievement in boxing. And not only that, her semi-final that she had to come through, she was fighting again. In my eyes, Kelly's beat. Out of the top 3 lightweights in the world, Kelly beat the other 2 who are just below her, en route to the final, or en route to the goal. So, yeah, what she's done within boxing is actually incredible, let alone getting just a gold medal, because obviously the headlines are read, Kelly's got a gold medal, but the actual sporting achievement is absolutely outstanding. And that's, again, it's another thing to be proud of.
Yeah, it's a great point. Like, her performance in the second round was outrageous.
Yeah, there's times when you just sit back and you remember, like, certain moments in time in sport and history, whether that's like in football, you have Shane Long's goal against Germany, you have in 2002 in football, Robbie Keane's goal, Kenny Egan in 2008, you've Katie, Michael Carew. This was one of those moments where Kelly just took the bull by the horns and absolutely dominated for the second 2 rounds and left nothing up for discussion. She won it clearly and comprehensively, and I think that's the sweetest part, because Olympic finals in amateur boxing, there can be decisions that are kind of a bit iffy or up for debate, whereas it was clear Kelly was the winner.
You made a brilliant point afterwards. I think you were speaking to Marty Morrissey, and even like in the midst of all the madness, like you gave this brilliant analysis. Like, I don't know how you stayed so calm. So you said often people, when the pressure comes on, they freeze, or certainly they tighten up. And you said Kelly somehow manages on the big stage to express herself. And that's a pretty good way of putting rounds 2 and 3. Like, she really did express herself. You could tell she was thinking so clearly.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where everything should have been at its hardest for Kelly. It looked like it was easy. She made it look easy. She just, I mean, if you watched if you watched the last 2 rounds of the fight and you didn't watch the first round, and you didn't ever watch that Brazilian girl before, you would actually think that Brazilian girl is not that good a fighter.
Yeah.
And that says everything you need to say about how well Kelly performed. She was excellent. She was smart in her performance, mature, strong. I think she stung the Brazilian girl once or twice in the fight, with some not really nice shots. So, yeah, I just think our sporting achievement was just absolutely it was outrageous how good she was in those 2 rounds. I'll never know where she finds the kind of ice in her veins to just calm down and just enjoy herself there in those moments, because that's special.
Yeah, like, it must be so surreal that it's your sister. Like, growing up, like, you've pulled her hair and you've got into fights, and then you've hung out and you've done all the things brother and sisters can do. You know each other so well, and it must be still surreal to just see what's happening and see the whole country talking about your sister this morning. I don't know when that sinks in, or, I mean, geez, the welcome home is going to be quite something as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just crazy. Like, it's just absolutely madness. Like, Kelly will get home on Tuesday or whenever she's home, and I'll say well done, and then after 5 minutes I'll be giving her a stick, or I'll be calling her an idiot, and we'll just be having to crack. But today she just went out and did what she had to do. I can't believe it. No, it's absolute madness.
Who runs out to tell your mum what's happened, or does mum come in for the announcement?
No, so she just listened to the screams usually. So the shouts, she listens to them. So it's the same with all Kelly's fights, whether that's small shows or the big ones. Usually me, my dad, and my brothers, or my brother, whoever's here, will watch the fight. My mum will be out the back, and we'll celebrate this one the same as we celebrate any of the others. It's the same for us. We always have that support for Kelly, and always had that long-term vision that she'd get what she deserves. And this was just the same. My ma just heard us absolutely shouting. I obviously knew it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, it's not that's not a silver medal cheer, I'd say she realised.
Exactly, yeah.
God, I mean, I can't imagine her perspective, just waiting for a scream, and then like probably thinking, God, it's been a bit long now, there hasn't been a scream, that's not good news, and then suddenly, whoom.
Yeah, I don't know personally. I don't know how my ma actually doesn't watch the fight, because for me, if I didn't do that, I'd be just 10 times more nervous, because when I watch Kelly, as anyone is probably who watches the fight to say, like she gets better, like she gets much better as she goes in the fights, and she just calms you down, like if you're supporting her. But yeah, every time Kelly lands a shot, you'd have me or my dad, my brothers, or somebody be screaming, lovely shots. They probably knew, like, as the fight went on, the more positive screams and the more cheers there was, she was thinking, we're on to a winner here.
Well, like, you could even hear Zor and John Conlon in the corner, 30 seconds left. I think even at that stage, when she only needed one judge in the final round to get her over the line, let alone all 5, but I think even at that stage, you must have been feeling unbelievably confident on the basis of that third round. So, I mean, I don't know, are you almost cheering her on then with a sense of, like, she's going to do it, she's about to cross the line?
Yeah, but at that level, it takes a small lapse in concentration, and you can get either. For example, if Kelly had a small lapse of concentration and got dropped, she'd have lost the fight.
Yes, it's still tense.
She cannot afford to have a half or a split second to take the eye off the ball. So until that bell rings and they stop throwing punches, you're always kind of zoned in and shouting, "Come on," or whatever it will be. Yeah. But our coaches are an absolute credit, and also our club coach Noel. They're just outstanding. They kind of, I suppose, what Kelly does in the ring replicates in many ways what they are on, whether that's outside the ring. They're kind of a calming influence. They're clear with their instruction. They're reassuring. They're just excellent. So actually hearing them throughout the fight and during the fight is excellent, because you have that trust then that she's being looked after.
Yeah. Joel, are you younger or older?
I'm younger. I'm the youngest in the family.
Right. What age are you?
I'm 24.
Jeez, you haven't done much media, I'd say, in your time, have you?
No. So before this, no.
Well, listen, for 25 minutes, you've just come on national radio and just been unbelievably brilliant. Like, you do punditry down the line if you want. Like, the way you've dissected the whole thing is just incredible. So, listen, thank you so much for coming on. It was great.
Is that a job offer?
Maybe. What's the plan for the next couple of hours then, or do you have one?
No, we don't have one. Me and my dad have kind of had a thing. Like, everybody's been coming down and asking us to plan stuff for the whole Olympics, and we just thought, we're not planning anything. It is what it is. And now that she's got the gold, that won't change. We'll just see what happens, and we'll probably celebrate with someone in the area some stage later this evening,
Yeah, okay, great. And maybe get some sleep, who knows?
Yeah, hopefully.
Listen, good man, thank you so much for coming on. I'm sure it's manic there, so we appreciate you giving up some precious time. Look, congratulations to you, to the whole family. I think the whole country's just delighted. I think part of this as well, people can see what a great family you all are and what a great person she is and how much love there is for her. So it's just a beautiful day for Irish sport, for the country. So, Joel, congratulations. Thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Cheers, fair play to you. Thank you.
Good man. That's Joel Harrington there. Brother of Kelly, and delighted, as you can all imagine. We'll just bring you some more reaction from Portland Road this morning. So that's Joel, one brother. We also had Aisling O'Reilly down there, and she was talking to Kelly's other brother, Christopher. He was the one, if you were watching this morning, in the retro Irish jersey with his mother Yvonne on his back jumping around. And then we have Kelly's father, Christy, as well. So this is Christopher and Dad, Christy.
Absolutely amazing for Kelly, and you as her family, you must be just beaming with pride.
Oh yeah, we are. We're just so thrilled, so delighted. It's just...
And did you always know that she was going to be Olympic champion, or what struck you about Kelly that she's just such a workhorse?
If everything fell into place, we knew Kelly would deliver. And everything fell into place, and she delivered. And she delivered in style.
You never know, like, when someone is born or when they're on the journey, if they're going to be an Olympic champion. But I think when as soon as she got to the Olympics, I mean, I felt that this is it. Like, that's her stage, you know what I mean? And when she got past Sessignon in the bronze fight, like I said to them yesterday, it's a dangerous fight for Ruaidhri. There's a lot of talk, obviously, in the media about Ruaidhri being favourite, but I told him and him.
Yeah.
No way. Like Kelly is favourite. Like for me, you just look at the styles and the contrast, and yeah, she was supreme today. Like she stepped up and she showed how good she is as a boxer.
And it was an unbelievable fight. It was probably the best fight I've ever seen Kelly box.
It was, yeah. No, it wouldn't be the best fight she ever had. No, Kelly had some really, really good fight, classy fights. No, but it was a very good fight between two different type boxers. Like Kelly is a boxer, that girl was a fighter. That was the difference.
Yeah, we were even saying like the path that she had to get there. Like even in the first fight that she fought against Molloy, the Italian, the fighters that Kelly's come up against in the Olympics are, I mean, top drawer. Like you know, Molloy in the first one, then Kellie, who brings just an unknown. You know, then the bronze fight. Like Kelly said after the fight, just the top operator, and then today to dispose of Ferreira the way she did. I mean, that's just it. Like she's unbelievable.
And seeing all the kids around here, I talked to some of the girls. Some of the girls and some of the young lads said, "I'm going to get involved in boxing now."
Yeah,
that's what it's about. That's what mean the most to Kelly. You know, obviously the gold medal in the Olympics is unbelievable, but when she sees the pictures and the videos of these young kids and girls just in front of the screen watching it, that's what it'll mean. Like,
for Kelly would want the kids to be confident and go their own dream. It doesn't have to be boxing. It can be whatever they want in life. Be confident and go for it. That's what she wants to get through the kids.
And when I pulled up today at about 5 a.m, Hakuna Matata was playing out over the speakers.
Yeah, up the road. It was It's lovely. Yeah. I don't know where she pulled that one out, but it's a cracker, isn't it? Yeah.
Unreal. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Do you have a message to send to Kelly?
Oh, we're just unbelievably proud of you, and we can't wait to get you home. We can't wait to get you home. Just let you experience what we've all experienced today. So well done. You've put not only Ireland deep and Dublin, but like she said, she's put Amar and Da and her brothers in a huge light, and we're just very, very proud of her.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks so much.
Yeah, there you are, Aisling O'Reilly speaking to the two Christies of the Harrington family. Neil Tracy joins me in studio. I mean, there's something beautiful about watching this family coming to terms. Coming to terms usually sounds like it's a bad thing. Coming to terms with a new reality and just the tears and the smiles and the reality kind of hitting them and dawning on them. Just extraordinary morning.
It's been unbelievable. And even just off air there, we were saying, like, I was in this morning and Aisling was sending back some of those videos that she'd taken with the family and with friends and neighbours down around Portland Row, and you're nearly getting a little bit choked up actually watching them and stitching them all together. And it was just a fantastic morning. Like, trying to think back to last night and the complete naivety of me going, well, I'll get up and, I'll watch the fight. Sure, I can doze off for an hour or so before getting, afterwards. Like, what sort of foolish thinking was that? Like, there's not a hope you're going back to sleep for 2 minutes after that. Yeah. Like, it was just incredible. And even as you were saying with Joel, her brother, where after the first round where she was behind on 3-2 with the way the judges had gone and with the way the Olympic boxing tournament had kind of progressed, it almost felt like if you lost the first round, even marginally, you needed something special to go out and actually pull it out of the bag. And that second round, I love how Joel likened it to Shane Long's goal against Germany, Robbie Keane in 2002. Like, it was emphatic. It was perfect boxing from her in that second round to just completely take control of the fight.
I think it was Eric Donovan said it. In the second round, she found her range, she found her distance, and from there just picked off Beatrice.
But she did it when she needed to as well.
Yeah, and you'd be entitled, being down in the first round, to panic a touch and to push it a touch. Instead, she completely outboxed her opponent in the second and third rounds, and so maintained composure, like Eric Donovan said, found the distance, found the range, and then landed blows at will. You would have to say. I mean, 5-0, 5-0, rounds 2 and 3 after losing the first.
Yeah, it was funny. I was watching the third round, and I know she won at 5-0. I think it was just the kind of the natural fear and the nervousness where, after the third round finished, in my head I was kind of going, I kind of don't even really remember too much of what happened in this round, because you were so nervous along the way, and it really, like, it felt like it could have gone either way. Thankfully, all the judges decided she was comfortably the best.
Yeah, and we've all our own experience this morning of it, because was talking to someone last night who really knows his boxing.
Yeah.
Really knows his stuff. And I just said to him, what do you think tomorrow? And he said, probably not. Probably just bridge too far, but like still Silver's incredible and it makes Kelly's career and all the rest of it. So I approached this morning with a sense of not foreboding, but like realism. And then after the first round, I thought, okay, look, it's going to be one of those days. And then we had liftoff. So, and her reaction, I was thinking, so we'll have Michael Carruth on the show later on. When he got the verdict, he jumped up and down like a maniac. He had his knees around his ears, he was jumping so high. Harrington seemed to be just instantly overcome with emotion. Yeah, and look, you could hear it when we played out the clip of her right at the top of the show where the instant reaction was just relief. Tears of relief, yeah. Like all of this is over, all of the sacrifice over the course of the last 5 years where obviously she had to wait her turn really for the Olympics because Katie Taylor was Ireland's lightweight for 2012 and 2016 and she has really had to be patient to get her opportunity because she was at light welterweight, I think it was, or something like that, and had to wait for Katie Taylor to move on. And I imagine the last 5 years where she's had great success, but there had to have been an element of just nervousness that, especially with the Olympics being put off by a year, am I losing my peak a little bit? There's all these factors coming into it. And to finally get there, I thought she was incredible throughout as well. I noticed after the first fight, some of the comments that she gave jumped out at me. That she was saying she was asked about, are you pleased about getting it over and done with that first fight? And she was saying she didn't think about it until the day of it. And foolish me, I kind of had it in my head that these athletes are over in Tokyo and they're thinking non-stop all day, every day about I've got this fight in 4 days' time. But it's having the wherewithal to just park it all for 3 days. And then you wake up in the morning, okay, I'm in fight mode now, and you go and do it. Yeah. That sort of stuff must be incredibly hard, I imagine, as well. Yeah, and it was in one of the papers, I'll get to it in the paper review, but they were making the point that she's been away now for close to 40 days in pre-Olympic camp, and then obviously over the last couple of weeks. So effectively, she was making the point that's about 40 days of isolating in a hotel room with the exception of going to the canteen, which is a 5-minute walk, and your training session on a given day. Otherwise, it's been 40 days of effectively being in a hotel room, and she was saying like that has been pretty tough as well, as you might imagine. So it's just been extraordinary stuff. We'll be talking about it right across the show. Like I said, Michael Carruth will join us later on, Kieran Cunningham as well. We will play you more reaction from Portland Row. If you're just tuning in, Joel Harrington, her younger brother, was absolutely exceptional there. I 25 minutes live on national radio. I mean, it was like he was just chatting down the phone to a friend, and brilliant analysis of the fight as well. So we'll park Harrington for a second. Is there anything else going on in the world we should know about? Yeah, I'll just wrap up a few other stories of the day. Elsewhere on the final day of the Games, Ireland's Kevin Seward finished 58th in the men's marathon, which was won again by Eliud Kipchoge, with Paul Pollock coming home in 71st. Stephen Scullion unfortunately withdrew at the 20-kilometre mark in what were extremely difficult conditions. And also on the final day for Ireland, Emily Kay finished 13th in the women's cycling omnium, which was won by America's Jennifer Vellante. Kilkenny and Cork will meet this afternoon for the right to face Limerick in the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Final in 2 weeks' time. Throw-in at Croke Park is 3:30. We'll be building up later on this afternoon with Tommy Welch. Limerick cruised into the final yesterday evening. They swept past Waterford at headquarters in a repeat of last year's All-Ireland Final. Limerick proved to be far too good, winning on a scoreline of 125 to 17 points. Meanwhile, Lionel Messi has confirmed he will be leaving Barcelona. The Argentinian is heavily linked with a move to PSG, and he says it is a possibility. He held a press conference this morning where he confirmed his Barcelona departure, saying, "Last year I wanted to leave, this year I did not." And finally then, Joe, a couple of games in the SSE Electricity League Premier Division today. Shamrock Rovers take on Longford and Dundalk host St Pat's, both of those at 3:30. And then in Scotland, Celtic host Dundee at 3 o'clock. That's one of 4 games in the Premiership today. Celtic will hope to take advantage of an early slip from champions Rangers. They were beaten 1-0 yesterday against Dundee United. Lovely stuff. We'll have Tommy Welch, by the way, at Croke Park. So from 3 o'clock, we'll be previewing that semi-final in the company of Tommy Welch. Next up, though, Katie Liston and Rory O'Connor will pick their way through the Sunday papers.
Off the ball on News Talk.
When it comes to brilliant Irish music artists.
Remember, stop, sip, sleep. From the Road Safety Authority.
The Sunday papers on Off the Ball.
Now you're very welcome back to the show. So we're going to pick our way through the Sunday papers. Very happy to say we have Dr. Katie Liston, Senior Lecturer at Ulster University with us. We have Rory O'Connor of the Irish Independent as well. The front page as well. I mean, it's tricky for the papers today for obvious reasons. They haven't got the story of the day. Nothing they could do about that. But the Sunday Independent have Kellie Harrington at the top. It's the first day of the rest of her life. Piece inside page 19. There's still some good pieces on Kellie Harrington in the papers today, which definitely have a bit of extra resonance after the events of 6 a.m. this morning. So the front page of the Sunday Independent, the picture is of Aaron Gillane for Limerick, yesterday scoring the only goal in his side's 11-point win over Waterford. Who's next? Ruthless Limerick march on is the headline. Beneath that, Gatlin's future grim as Lions lose. That's Warren Gatlin's future. The grim part they're talking, by the way, is just the immediate future as opposed to anything more damaging. So he was just chatting and they were asking him what's next, and he says, well, I have a long flight home and then 14 days isolation in a hotel. That's the least of what I'm looking forward to doing. So you can imagine that is quite tough for Gatland, and I presume the players as well if Gatland has to do it. I don't know what the various rules are, but home and then 14 days in a hotel room. That will be a lot of time to think about what went wrong for Warren Gatland. Sunday Mirror Sport then. Treaty back and decider. That's Limerick again. Limerick 125, Waterford 17 points if you missed the scoreline. Obviously it's Kilkenny and Cork today. And then beneath that, Harry Kane talk. Up to you, Harry. Spurs star will have to drive deal if he wants the £100 million plus City move, is the view there in the Sunday Mirror. We have the back page of the Mail on Sunday then. Again, it's Limerick. So Garage Hegarty and Keane Lynch posing for a photo. No derailing Limerick as champions cruise past Waterford into final. And then brewing story here, unfortunately. Tyrone COVID cases put All-Ireland semi-final in doubt. So it does seem as if Tyrone are struggling with an outbreak of COVID. A significant number of players, it says here, courtesy of Philip Lanigan, are self-isolating as a result of more infections within the camp. So Tyrone beat Monaghan in the Ulster final last week without Rory Brennan and Frank Burns and Tiernan McCann, and joint manager Fergal Logan wasn't present either. They've had a round of tests and the results of those tests are due tomorrow. So hopefully there's good news, and there is the possibility, if needs be, of rescheduling the match. The All-Ireland final is on August 29th, so there is a gap week if needs be. So already Saturday, August 21st has been talked about. If the match can't go ahead as planned, that would be the day before the hurling final. So the Tyrone camp struggling with that. Sunday Times, they go with the Lions again as their main picture, a picture of Alwyn Jones beneath the pile of bodies. Lions lose series again to Late Stein penalty, and beneath that, the big picture, the main story is semi-final threat after latest Tyrone outbreak. Michael Foley here again, similar points to Philip Lanigan's piece on Tyrone and the COVID outbreak and the possibility of moving the game to the Saturday before the hurling final. Then we have back page of the Star, and it's Stein in neck for Lions. It's Greal Steele, Jack Grealish making his debut yesterday in the Community Shield. Sunday World, Limerick here again. Limerick have plenty to spare as Waterford are dismantled, is how they put it. And then Sun Sport, they go with Harry Kane's story in isolation at training ground. Harry Kane apparently, and they have Limerick as well. And then at the very top they have Kelly's our hero. And so they write on the back page here, The Sun, by the time you pick up this paper, you will know whether Kellie Harrington has won a gold or silver medal. Sun Sports says it does not matter the colour of the medal because Harrington has secured a unanimous decision from the people of Ireland. Humble, humorous, the 31-year-old is the best of us and has shown that on the Olympic stage. She's a frontline worker who put aside concerns about her own health and Olympic ambitions to continue working as a cleaner in St Vincent's Hospital, Fairview. She has stressed that whatever happens here does not define her. She is right, as her catchphrase goes, Hakuna Matata. So that was a nice way, I suppose, of covering Kellie Harrington on the back page of The Sun. And Katie Liston, it's much easier to say it doesn't matter if it's gold or silver when she's won the gold, I think. This is a much happier morning than if we were all here saying, well, look, a silver medal's still a wonderful achievement. Gold is wonderful, and the scenes from her home this morning, equally wonderful.
Heartwarming, and a really nice way to finish the Olympic schedule as well from an Irish perspective, Joe, because we've probably just properly gorged out, haven't we, on the array of sport on view over the last few weeks. as well as the timing of the highlights, because in some ways the time zones has almost worked to our advantage. Sometimes you think, psychologically, well, if I sleep through this tonight, I'll get the highlight first thing in the morning, not of obviously Kelly, but of some of the other events as well. And there's so many interwoven stories and issues that have come through the Olympics this time round as well. There's a really nice feature, and I'm sure we'll get to this in a few minutes, of the kind of performance of Team Ireland overall in the Sundo. And I would imagine there's some within Team Ireland that are probably a little bit disappointed, because there were aspirations, I think, for medalists from some of our other Olympians as well.
Rory, did you set the alarm for 5:58 or did you watch it since?
5:55, Joe. Just watched it in bed, quietly with earphones in, trying not to wake the baby. Got just pangs of regret that I only live 20-minute walk from Portland Row. I just wish I got up at 5:30 and walked over, because it just looked incredible. Obviously, it wasn't my party, and I probably feel like a gate crasher if I was there, but that looked like Italia 90 this morning, and it's just. Kellie Harrington just seems like such an authentic person, and it's so rare to hear people with her accent and her brother and her family's accent being talked about so positively in national media, being portrayed so positively. Just seeing their joy and their just that outpouring of emotion this morning. It's just like every time you hear a clip or watch a clip from there or listen to any of them speaking, it just brings a smile to your face. It's just lifted everyone this morning. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, I thought one of the more incredible scenes, Katie, was when the verdict was in and it was positive and they cut to the street, and I likened it to like the Black Friday sales in the US, where they open the doors and the crowd all run in en masse. So everybody running up from the big screen up to the Harrington house, and then the Harringtons opening the door at the same time, and Dad trying to get the champagne open, and I think one brother has Yvonne, the mother, on his back, and the others jumping up and down, and you could see like the closeness, like, good friends over the years suddenly greeting each other, and it was just the most beautiful, emotional, powerful few moments.
And there are those ephemeral moments in sport, Joe, because it allows us all to have an anchor of meaning, I suppose, and a sense of heimat almost, where we experience our own villages or even smaller local communities like Portland Row and the towns and cities. We experience them with the people that we know, and sometimes it can be that buffer against the broader social, economic and political forces at work, and that was certainly the case. And I think all of us wish we had some direct connection to Portland Row today, and I guess the collective support and sense of happiness on the part of Kellie Harrington, because it's been a long shift for her. I heard some of the interview you had earlier with her brother, and she talks about it a bit more in Tommy Conlon's piece as well today in the Sunday Independent. So it's been a tough and a rewarding, thankfully, for her outcome.
Yes, well, if you have that close to hand, you could maybe elaborate on that, because the papers have done their best here, and this was a success story either way, so they could write the Harrington pieces, whether it was gold or silver. So a lot of the pieces still stand up. So what was in Tommy's piece?
So Tommy's on page 19 of the Sunday Independent Sport, and like some of the other writers you've mentioned, Joe, he was anticipating whether it was going to be gold or silver, so we could read this, I think, with a sense of relief no matter what. But he does talk about the extent to which high-end sport almost demands of its practitioners that their connections with community are compromised, if not severed and severed. And that's why this particular medal stands out, I guess, for the authenticity that Rory's just mentioned. But as you go through the piece, you do get a real sense, and he brings it to life, the contrast and the demands that there are in order to achieve this in many ways. So he goes on to talk about the background and the ways in which Kellie was running out of options. She was a drifting teenager before she discovered boxing, or as he puts it, before boxing discovered her. And in classic style, sport offered her an alternative to the wrong pathway in life, which was apparently beckoning. And then he goes on a little bit to talk about the performance of boxing, which is of course, the ribbon sport in many ways for Irish Olympics. And as you've mentioned earlier, the fact that 60 kilograms was an Olympic weight, and Katie Taylor was queen of that division. So when Taylor turned pro after the Rio Olympics in 2016, it left a vacancy that Harrington subsequently occupied. And she says herself, and this is Tommy quoting her, "I've been living in the shadows of a fantastic athlete in Katie Taylor. Like it's hard when you're living in the shadow of someone, you can imagine how sick you're going to get of doing that. But whereas Taylor conquered her sport as if it were her manifest destiny, Harrington struggled to square her success with her self-image. And I think there is still a sense in the really authentic interviews she gives of still being almost disbelieving of what she's managed to achieve. And hopefully over time coming to grips with that and realising that it is a very unique position, and she's now one of very few who can claim, on the part of Irish athletes at least, to have won Olympic gold. But at the end of that piece, Tommy Conlon also talks to her about, and quotes her, on the difficulty she had to endure while at the Olympics. And that's one of the standout things for me, Joe, over the course of the many issues that have, I suppose, come to the fore in the Olympics, is the ways in which the role of spectators is often commented on positively and negatively. And in a lot of cases, there were some events where there were fewer spectators than normal and you had athletes performing to their highest levels. There were other events where there were no spectators, maybe perhaps only officials. And for the athletes themselves, Kellie says, people think you're having a great time out here. And she said this after the semi-final. I've been sitting in my room, looking at the four walls, going to the food hall, maybe a 5-minute walk, back to my room, then a little session with my coaches. That's what dedication is. And then that transfers into the ring. It's patience to be able to do that for 35 days so that I can do that for 9 minutes in there. And I think that in some ways answers Neil's observation earlier. I know Neil Tracy was talking about perhaps his naive assumption that that was the only thing that all our athletes are going to think about when they're there. But when you've just survived that amount of time, not only in isolation, not being pretty much disconnected from the normal Olympic routine, but by the sounds of it, also living in your own head for that period of time. And for Kellie working her way through and trying to take it one step at a time, that has also been, I think, a very notable psychological achievement on her part, because she's still quite disbelieving of what she's managed to achieve herself. And it's very endearing, I think.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And Tommy says she's struggled to square her success with her self-image. And he has that quote that she gave in an interview just the other day. She says, sometimes I think I'm lucky. And then it's like CBT happening before her eyes, because then she rationalises with herself. But then I can't be so lucky to be winning all these things and end up here with a bronze medal in my bag from the games. It's even like some part of her brain is saying, well, I guess not everyone, you can't luck your way to a bronze medal, so maybe I'm actually okay. We're going to pick this up in just a second on the far side of news headlines. We'll go into the ads with, here's Aisling O'Reilly, our reporter who was at Portland Road this morning. Again, a sense of the excitement, just some neighbours and well-wishers here.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Hero, Kellie, you've done it. Thank God and thank our lady and all your good neighbours and friends. 3 cheers for Kellie.
What would you like to say to Kellie?
Just congratulations from all the Portland Road, Portland Close and the community. And we're proud of her. She had the gold and she brought the gold home. So we're looking forward to coming home on Tuesday, and the reception will be fantastic. And please God that all the children in the area will take note of it and they grow up to be like her. And she's a fine example for coming from Portland Row and the Portland Row area. So from all the neighbourhood and myself, congratulations, Kellie. Well done.
Yeah, so proud of you, Kellie. Literally so proud of you, honey. From all the Portland Road, we all love you.
What does it mean to everybody here today?
Ecstatic. There's no feeling in the world like it.
Have you ever seen scenes like this here?
No, never. Brilliant. Yeah. She's a gem. She's one of a kind. She's a gem.
And during lockdown, we've seen her out doing all the exercise and all.
Yeah, everything. Running up and down and all of the kids, everything. She's brilliant. I have to tell you, I went to Mass yesterday evening and I asked Jesus to keep giving her that strength, because we knew she had a win and we knew she would have. But you always have to have that little book. And I'm after crying down there watching her. I'm after crying.
And what would you like to say to Kellie?
Fair play to you, honey. You've done a great job, and you're proud. Portland Road is proud of you.
You're one of us.
And always will be.
Yes.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
This weekend on News Talk.
Papers on Off the Ball.
Now, you're very welcome back. So happy to say we have Dr. Katie Liston with us, Senior Lecturer at Ulster University. We have Rory O'Connor from the Irish Independent as well. We've been talking about Kellie Harrington. I was just reading again that Tommy Conlon piece you had picked out, Katie, and even quotes from Kellie Harrington herself, where she was talking about the last 40 days or so coping with the essential loneliness of her mission, as Tommy puts it. She said, "People think you're out here having a great time. I've been sitting in my room looking at the four walls, going to the food hall, maybe a 5-minute walk back to my room, then a little session with my coaches. That's what dedication is, and then that transfers into the ring. It's patience to be able to do that for 35 days. So I can do that for 9 minutes in the ring," is what she said after one of the fights. So, I mean, that is some stint, Rory O'Connor, isn't it? 35, and then I guess now the extra 5 days since that comment, 40 odd days effectively in your hotel room.
Yeah, it's a long time to be living in your own head, and with the, I know she seems to be able to shut it out and kind of has been able, you know, even I think her parents have said, you know, they've heard very little from her directly, that they're kind of content to leave her be and to do her work and to focus on her fights. But, you know, I think, you know, it'd be hard not to have an idea of how much it means to the people back home and to let that seep into your mind. So it just shows how mentally strong she is. And the piece I've kind of gone back to today, I think the piece that brought me awareness of Kellie Harrington was one Johnny Waterston wrote in the Irish Times in 2019, in February 2019, that they've actually republished on their website this morning. It was a one-on-one interview. It was out of competition, and it was a proper sit-down. And I think it's quoted in a couple of the profiles that I've read this morning, the one that Sunday Times and Dennis Walsh did. And it's just really, like, she's just so open and so revealing and talks with such clarity about her own kind of journey from leaving school at 14 and just finding that school wasn't the place for her. And, you know, like, she would have been written off at that point by people who knew her and people who, you know, as someone who wasn't going to make it. And she comes from an area that's written off by society. And yet, you know, she turned around through boxing. She joined the army and she walked away 4 months in because she just didn't like it. So she had the strength of character back then as a teenager to say, no, this isn't for me. And, you know, like, it shines through. And her poster was up in the North Inner City all through the first lockdown as you know, telling people to stay at home because they knew that people would listen to Kellie, you know, that she's an example for that area. She knows that she is a flag bearer and always has been for the last kind of 5 or 6 years or longer for where she comes from. But she wears it very easily, and she seems to just be able to work with, you know, like bear it very easily, and also bear the pressure on her shoulders and bring her Hakuna Matata mentality through. And, like, it's easy saying that, but it's much more difficult to live it. And I'm just full of admiration for the woman. She's just been so impressive in and out of the ring over the last couple of weeks and beyond.
I also think, Katie, there's this slightly odd phenomenon, and it applied to Katie Taylor in 2012 as well, whereby people know of Kellie Harrington and have done for some time, and she was a world champion in 2018, and they see her on the Late Late Show or see her with Tommy Tiernan, or she's been on this show numerous times or various other shows a lot of the time as well. I suspect 90% of the watching audience over the past couple of weeks were seeing her fight for the first time. Her fights are never on.
Mm-hmm. And I also suspect her life is about to change in ways she cannot predict because of that. I mean, in that Tommy Conlon piece, she talks about the importance of needing to escape the tunnel of full-time training. And so working with psychiatric patients in St. Vincent's provided her with this balance to the monotony of her physical regime in the build-up to the Olympics. And because of that late development, she's really immersed herself in that side of her boxing career, probably only over the last 5 to 6 years. And there's probably more to come, given now the confidence I think that she'll take from this. She does her shift on the ward every second weekend. And I get the sense, reading between the lines of that kind of discussion, that not only is she balanced, as Rory has said, but I think she recognises she needs that balance. And that's going to be even more important to her now going forward, because those who achieve Olympic gold medals, their lives can change, as I say, in ways that we can't quite anticipate.
Yeah, on the late development, Dennis Walsh has a piece in the Sunday Times this time, and, you know, he was harking back to, really, it's only 2016 when Harrington was funded properly. She arrived at the World Championships in Kazakhstan. On the way, she had to cut back, in the build-up to it rather, she had to cut back her working hours so she could devote more time to training, getting by on a social welfare check. She put together a little war chest to bring with her to Kazakhstan. When she could not stomach the food in the hotel, she blew the kitty on grub. And then she only received a Sport Ireland grant the following year, and then she won gold the year after that in 2018 at the World Championships. So, it's not like sponsorship has come her way all that easily either. So it really has been kind of a late blooming. Just to segue away from Harrington for a second and to the architecture around her, we all know about Zor. And that's all, Zor is all we ever refer to him as. Zor Antia, his full name, obviously. So the man behind the medals is Sean McGoldrick here in the Sunday Independent. I thought this was a brilliant piece. And Zor's Roll of Honour is there. And it's Kenneth Egan, it's Darren Sutherland, it's Paddy Barnes. In London, it was Katie Taylor, John Joe Nevin, Paddy Barnes, Michael Conlon. And now Tokyo, Aidan Walsh and Kellie Harrington, obviously. And so Sean charts Zor's arrival. I hadn't been fully, I don't know why, I had not come across the details of how they found him in the first place. And it's a fascinating piece by Sean McGoldrick. Gary Keegan, as we know, huge figure in Irish sports, sets up the high performance unit from about 2003, and he had it in his head that certainly a Russian trainer or a former Soviet Union trainer would have been the way to go. And Europe had become very difficult. The Soviet Union had broken up, which meant suddenly all of these various states had brilliant boxers, and it was making life very difficult for the Irish boxers, is what somebody said here. And we needed to learn all we could in Europe and become competitive again against European opponents. And Sean McGoldrick says here, it was a simple case of serendipity which brought Antia to Ireland. It was in the spring of 2003. Cork businessman Dan O'Connell, who's also an international boxing official, he was friends with a boxing referee in Georgia. The referee had invited him over to help train local referees. And so what Dan O'Connell says was, I noticed a coach working with a group of boxers in the other half of the gym. The guy just caught my attention. I didn't know how to explain it. It's a bit like seeing a golfer swing a club. There was just something there. I remember thinking, that guy looks good. And so they sent out Antia, and he said, yeah, maybe I might think about going to Ireland. Gary Keegan did his own research, and he was blown away by what he found out about Zor. So he said, Zor was phenomenally successful, phenomenally entrepreneurial, a phenomenal relationship builder, and very creative. This was very obvious because he had more boxers in the old Soviet Union teams than any of the republics other than Russia. There was the language issue, he says, but that was counterbalanced by other factors. And Darren O'Neill is later quoted saying Zor couldn't speak English, but he could speak boxing. And so Antia had an 8-year-old daughter, a 4-year-old son. His wife, Nona, expected his stay in Ireland would be relatively short. Within 2 years, the entire family moved to Ireland. Their third child, George, was born here. All are now Irish citizens. And Kenneth Egan tells a great story about how Kenneth thought he was an 8 out of 10 boxer, and Zor told him he was at a 2 and couldn't believe that he only trained twice a week and whipped everybody into shape. So, the Zor Antia story, here he is. When did he come over? I guess shortly after 2003. And here he is effectively 18 years later and has just quietly gone about his business. We don't, Rory, hear of Zor except for mainly the Olympics every few years, and he's there in the corner. And it turns out he was pretty much the best operator in the Soviet Union, and somehow we nabbed him, and it was courtesy of serendipity as much as anything.
Yeah, there's a touch of the Stephen Cluxton man of mystery kind of thing, isn't it? The man in the background, it doesn't really give that many interviews and it doesn't speak English that well, and he's just there. He's this kind of figure who's in the background of all these champion fighters that we've watched every 4 to 5 years, depending on whether the Olympics is delayed or not, over the last couple of cycles. But I you would have presumed he would have been quite burnt by the Billy Walsh affair, by Rio. That's touched on with Sean McGoldrick's piece, and he stuck with it. He stayed true to this. Amidst all of the controversy that reigns around boxing behind the scenes. Losing fighters to the professional game and in the wake of Rio, and building a new team and all of that as well. It's a very impressive CV that he's got, to put it mildly, and it's a really interesting story. And you've kind of gone through the highlights there, but it's even the fact that he had this really impressive manifesto, but it was all in Georgian, so no one could understand it. To break down that boundary and to come over at that stage of his career to a whole new country and make it his home. It's a lovely story, and it's a real success story, and he's clearly got some magic that all of these fighters keep buying into, and he's like the boxing whisperer, isn't he? He's got this common touch that even when he maybe can't communicate it in the words, he's able to get his message across.
Yeah, Zor couldn't speak English, but he could speak boxing. Katie.
Yeah, and where I am, there is victory. This is the one sentence he learned in English when he had to stand in front of the interview board, and how right it was. That piece actually, for me, what stands out for me about that piece is the nuances of the movement of sporting talent around the world, Joe, as part of this kind of almost global sporting arms race, because all the nations are vying for medals on the podium. And with that comes the movement of talent, but crucially coaching talent as well. And I think what's striking about this case is the extent to which the high performance unit have not only managed to attract the talents of a clearly phenomenally successful coach, but he's brought with him a set of skills and a toolkit that has allowed him to adapt his knowledge to the cultural nuances of boxing in Ireland. And that's what's made it successful, because there's been a lot of other cases where you get the sporting coaching talent parachuting in their ideas into a new environment, but those ideas don't quite work in that environment because they haven't been able to blend them. And the very fact that his family is now settled here, that their family, that the child George is born and all are now Irish citizens, that undoubtedly has paid into the longevity with which he's now in Ireland and to the success he's managed to achieve. And the other thing that stands out, and he hasn't made very many public statements, as you say, but in passing, he has said in Tokyo that the 9 medals that he's associated with should be 11. So he's held on to that hurt from Rio. He's held on to what happened with Michael Conlon, but also what happened with Katie Taylor. And he's managed to, use that as a motivation for himself as well. You can think about the motivation he's required over that period of time not to mind the boxers themselves.
Yeah, well, listen, hopefully nobody outside of this country reads that piece, because people will come for Zor when they start to realise just how impressive this guy is. Before we leave the Olympics then, Katie, I know you'd picked out a few different pieces. There was like Eamon Sweeney taking a bigger picture view of things, and then there was Declan Lynch in the main section of the Sunday Independent, and Shane Ross, I think, writing a piece he probably just thoroughly enjoyed. It struck me as one of these pieces he kind of hammered out in half an hour, that way, with his a big smile on his face where he's
I think so.
Yeah, so what do you want to focus on here before we move on elsewhere?
I mean, for anybody maybe if they've been asleep for the last 3 weeks and knows nothing about the Olympics in Ireland, which is unlikely, but there might be one or two. Eamon Sweeney does a nice kind of overview on page 16 and 17 of the Sunday Independent Sport. Declan Lynch takes a bit more of a realistic view, and this is in page 24 of the main paper, and he asks about the extent to which the improved performances might be attributed not only to the Tokyo track, and he gives us a nice explanation of why many people are talking about that track being fast-tracked, and also equally of the analysis of the running shoes that are now super light shoes that contain a rigid plate and unique foam and so on. So he takes brings us back to earth, I think, to ask, a bit more challenging.
I have to say, I would tend to agree with them, Katie. I mean, we're still dealing with the fallout of London. I mean, we're still not 10 years from London where all those samples can be tested, and we still have medals being handed out and people upgraded with failed tests. And I mean, I take the point on the shoe technology and the fast track, but I mean, let's be honest, the Olympics here has a reputation, and I doubt it's suddenly come good in the last couple of years. I mean, I think Lynch's scepticism will probably prove to be well founded over the next couple of years.
I agree. And not least because, I mean, even the trail of doping tests after London 2012 didn't really open up for maybe 3 to 4 years afterwards, because in many ways all of the research would tell us that the developments in the use of performance enhancing drugs are often ahead of the testers themselves. And he raises the point as well about whether the pandemic having curtailed the activities of the drug testers as well for at least a year leading up to Tokyo. So I think it's a healthy scepticism, but he ties it in importantly, Joe, into the change that's soon to come in Irish legislation around gambling, which of course is directly connected to sport. So he says, in relation to tying the two topics together, doping and gambling, basically the dopers have only one purpose, they just want to win. But there are gambling syndicates and other bad actors who can play with a myriad of propositions and make them happen. So he's raising, and I think rightly so, awareness of the need for that regulation to have happened much sooner than now, but also getting us to think about its impact going forward. And the final piece, if you want me to say something briefly on it, is as you say, Shane Ross's opinion piece. And I think the most important thing to say about this one is that under opinion, and the headline on page 22, are the words commentary, insights, personal perspective. So I think all I could say about this is that it's definitely Shane Ross's personal perspective. And it's an enjoyable read because he reflects back, of course, to Rio 2016 and the role of Pat Hickey. And he draws out some of the concerns that other writers, reputable journalists in the Guardian and elsewhere, about Hickey's methods. And links that, I guess, to one of the biggest political issues from the Tokyo Olympics, which is the treatment of the Belarusian athlete. And he raises then questions about Hickey's relationship with Lukashenko. So it's a nice read for those that are interested in the politics of the Olympics.
Yeah, I think he's suggesting maybe Irish ambassador to Belarus might be the role for Hickey, is what he's suggesting. So, yeah, his tongue firmly in his cheek, I would think, a lot of the way through. Although before Shane Ross gets too, I don't know what the word is, like happy with himself. It is worth remembering he did go on national radio to talk about how great John Delaney was in late 2018 on this station, and how like everything he'd heard at grassroots was great about John Delaney. So, I always that one sticks for me with Shane Ross as well, I have to say, before he's too busy pointing fingers elsewhere. But there you go. It's on the page 22 of the Sunday Independent main section if people want to check it out. It's Shane Ross on Pat Hickey. Is there anything else on the Olympics, Rory, you want to mention before we move off?
Yeah, I think Carl Dennehy's piece in the Sunday Indo is very good on the doping or potential for doping topic. It's quite balanced. Carl's had an unbelievable Olympics, up there with many of the athletes in my book. I think his work ethic has been phenomenal, and some of the quality of his work over there has been really, really good. Yeah. And he just pulls it all together and kind of talks about the kind of background and why he understands, like he's an athletics journalist himself, and he's a very good one, and he understands the skepticism, but says he doesn't agree that you can just write it all off, but you should bring some level of kind of a pinch of salt to the table. And I mean the fact that even already we're hearing that Lamont Marcel Jacobs, who won the 100 metres and was part of the Italy team to win the 100 metres relay, is linked to a kind of dodgy nutritionist, is already kind of, the alarm bells are already starting to go off. But he said the time that he ran was way below what we were looking at 10 years ago. So it is, it's easy to get lost in the fantasy of it. I think Sonia O'Sullivan was the only analyst really on TV that I saw over the course of the games who brought up doping, and when she was asked to explain why Kenya weren't really punching the weight that we expect them to, she just said that the doping control has been tightened over there in the wake of positive cases. But watching a lot of it, you would swear that it didn't really exist. And I think that those two pieces are pretty good reminders. And there's a piece by Rick Broadbent very briefly in the Sunday Times, which I didn't reference before, but where he talks about the protests and the fact that not everyone in Tokyo was in favour of this, and the fact that case numbers have spiralled during the games, and that the real legacy of the games won't be known until afterwards. It may not be known that one of his colleagues was actually kind of verbally abused in the street, which, I mean, my experience of Japan 2 years ago with the World Cup was universal positivity. So for locals to be that, it must be like to do that just shows how moved they were in anger at the whole thing going ahead. He was abused because he was wearing an Olympics accreditation, and the person who abused him was so frustrated about the fact that the games were going ahead and felt they shouldn't. It's just an interesting insight from someone who's on the ground. With a lot of people are covering this from home because of COVID and stuff. So the guys who were on the ground have done an unbelievable job. Connell being the one that stands out to me anyway. Yeah, agreed. He's been exceptional. We'll take a short break. Katie Liston, Rory O'Connor on the way next. More thoughts on the papers. We're going to chat some GAA. We'll talk hurling. There's Premier League previews, which are pretty interesting. And coverage of the Lions next. I mean, the Lions obviously went close, but not close enough. Once again, Morné Steyn kicking the winning penalty for South Africa. So we'll see what the Lions coverage is like today next.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Debt.
Internet. The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Now you're welcome back. We have Rory O'Connor of the Irish Independent, Dr. Katie Liston as well, Senior Lecturer at Ulster University. So the Lions, Rory, this long and unwieldy tour has come to an end. What are the papers making of the Lions' defeat and Warren Gatland, and how the whole thing will be remembered?
Yeah, it's obviously quite immediate, because it's the game was 5 o'clock, finished around 7. They got it done in 2 hours last night, I think, or maybe just over. And there's no one definitive piece that you would go to, but I think there's a lot of good points made across a number of different places, largely seen as a missed opportunity. I think no one doubts the commitment and the fact that the Lions had to brave a pretty a test of endurance. Like we talked about Kellie Harrington being in isolation for a long time, or being in Tokyo on her own for a long time. I mean, the Lions have been there for, cut off from the rest of South African society for 6 weeks now, pretty much, and away from family. And Dan Biggar has a column in the Mail on Sunday, which is quite interesting, where he talks about just wanting to get home and see his daughter, see his sister, who his mother passed away just before the tour, so he's like been cut off from it all. But from a match point of view, like there's a line in Biggar's column that just kind of sums up where they went wrong, really. Like he's talking, I presume his goats got him before the game and had a lot of this written and then just put a top on it because of the time involved. But he was talking about the week's preparation, and he says the coaches challenged us in our pre-match meetings. They told us we were soft. They laid down a challenge. Physicality became a big theme because as rugby players, especially forwards, you don't want to hear your coaches telling you that you're a bit soft in contact. Now, like, if that's all the lines were being told in training during the week, then it tells you a lot about why they only scored 2 tries from rolling mauls over the course of 240 minutes of rugby. And ultimately, for all that, South Africa was an unbelievable pack, it came down to the fact that South Africa took their chances and the Lions didn't. And Warren Gatland, who has been a lucky general over the years, almost got the stroke of luck when Finn Russell was sent in. And Stuart Barnes writes very well about the impact Finn Russell had when he came on after 11 minutes in changing the way the Lions played. And suddenly Russell opened up new possibilities in terms of the chances they created, in terms of the movement the players responded to him. And I know he was injured for the first and second test, so he couldn't have been there. But the mindset shift that he brought, if they had that from the start, if they'd had a bit of ambition, if they'd gone and played, what could they have achieved over the course of this tour? And when we talk about the joy that Kellie Harrington brought this morning and the joy that we've seen in Portland Row and everything, I think anyone who's been following the Lions closely, particularly in this side of the world, there hasn't been a lot of joy around it. It hasn't been a particularly joyful experience to cover it. It's been pretty sour and pretty turgid. Maybe it's South Africa, they're celebrating as if they've won the World Cup all over again. They did seem pretty happy about it, but it hasn't been the event I think rugby needed and rugby would have hoped for, and it's left a bit of a sour taste in the mouth, albeit South Africa deserved their win, and at least it was won by that one moment of magic by Cheslin Colby last night.
Well, I know, if there hadn't been that moment of magic, you wonder what you could remember from these matches. So the headline on Brendan Fanning's piece is "Poisonous Series ends on a high note for South Africa," though he says at least this was a match worth watching, and it was definitely an improvement, this match. He says of South Africa, certainly the Boks are mostly dull and brutish, but they have top-notch skills that can run through phases playing with width when the mood takes them. The pity is for the game and its spectators, the mood doesn't wash over them very often. Bernard Jackman is certainly critical-ish, I would say, of Gatland and the job the coaching ticket did. Talks about the original squad selection and the absence of Henry Slade or Gary Ringrose or Johnny Sexton that affected the ability to get the ball wide and outside that hinge defence that shut the Lions down so effectively. The back three selection in the second test was costly, and he says the Lions only scored, as you said, Rory, 2 tries in the 3 test matches, both with 5-metre line-out drives. Yesterday, despite an improved attack, the Boks defence still relatively comfortable. Ian McGeechan in the Telegraph, over on the next page as well in the Sunday Independent, the headline there is "Opportunity knocked, but tourists turned a deaf ear." And effectively, I mean, he's talking about the Finn Russell thing as well. For large periods of the match, the Lions played with dynamism, ambition and front foot momentum, which made me wonder what could have been had they found that formula early on. And that's probably the big critique, I would think, Katie, across the various pages, is that Gatland went out with this incredibly conservative game plan. They were almost South Africa light. It didn't really work. They got away with it in the first test. You suspect South African fitness was an issue. And more by accident than design, the fact that Dan Biggar had to go off injured and Finn Russell was thrown on after 12 minutes, we saw actually that the Lions could have played so much more rugby in this game and it would have been more effective. And that's the big charge really against Gatland in all the papers today, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of the sense of a little bit more freedom that came when Finn Russell was brought onto the pitch. I think on page 11 as well, Bernard Jackman says the big winners from this tour from an Irish point of view were Jack Conan, Tadhg Furlong and Robbie Henshaw, who could easily be player of the series. And I mean, from the Irish perspective, Mick Galway, I think, if I remember correctly, I think this is in the Sunday World, also questions the exclusion of Johnny Sexton and goes a step further because he cites Gatland who's, I think, originally had said, well, Johnny Sexton mightn't last 3 games or wouldn't necessarily be able to cope with 3 games in a row. And Galway asked the question, well, did he need to play in 3 games in a row? And certainly maybe the forced inclusion of Finn Russell does get us to think about the ways in which Gatland had planned for any rotation or not, as the case may be, of that out-half position, and where indeed, if he saw Johnny Sexton as part of that package moving forward. It also points, I think, to the very fine margins. I mean, there's also a criticism. McGeechan is one of them, talking about that crucial 2-on-1 when Williams had the potential to I suppose take advantage of the overlap and get the Lions on the front foot, which have meant that at one stage in the game they could have been, almost 17-3 up at that stage had they taken some of the points that were available to them. And there's also certain questions about Alan Wynne-Jones continually going for the line with some of those kickable points. McGeechan talks the extent to which, get the points on the scoreboard and build a momentum and go from there. Ultimately, he comes down on the side of saying the Lions fell short, they'll never get a better opportunity because creating chances is just half the job, you also have to finish them. Yeah. And he says this will sting for the next 12 years.
Yeah, I think McGeechan on the decision to kick, they turned down 3 kicks at goal in the first half, and he's quite nuanced and teases out quite well in that, well, the first time they did it, they scored a try from it, so then you sort of have to do it the second time to see if your maul works again. But when that didn't work and you get the 3rd kick, that's where you have to take the points, and that's the ebb and flow of Test match, I suppose. I mean, I was quite thankful, Rory, for Conor Murray, that after turning down the points with 10 minutes to go and ultimately not scoring a try, Mako Vunipola held up, and then South Africa won a scrum penalty. I was quite thankful for his sake that the Lions did get level then on the scoreboard, so at least it's not a massive fallout today about Conor Murray, inexperienced captain, and turned down the points. It's probably still a question mark, but at least it's not that was the only chance they had to get level.
Well, I was in New Zealand 4 years ago when they drew the series, and I mean that didn't satisfy anyone. It was you don't go on a Lions tour to draw, and whereas Mornay Stein was being given the kicking tee to go and win it. If Conor Murray had handed the kicking tee to Finn Russell at that moment, that was to level it up. Whereas he had a chance to go and put them 4 points, in theory, to go to the corner and try and put them four points up. And I think he backed the bravery of that call. You can't criticise the conservative level of play and then, criticise them then for being brave at the times as well. I would back the players in that regard, and I think Gatland did. It was risky and it didn't come off, but we should applaud players, I think, for taking risks. And I mean, there was enough time on the clock for them to go and get the next kick, and and they did, and it went. And even they conceded that penalty. Robbie Henshaw goes up and wins that last kickoff unbelievably well. I mean, if they had won, the things that will be written about him in today's paper, like he almost single-handedly, maybe with help from Maro Itoje, kept them in the game. And they get that scrum penalty, and then the pitch gives way underneath Mako Vunipola's legs, and he gives a penalty away. I mean, Katie mentioned margins. That's incredible, and I haven't seen a view of that scrum penalty yet from the side where it was actually given. You just have to trust the officials and get on with it. There's not enough going around at the moment, but it was an incredible drama. And I'm sure the tenor and tone of a lot of the coverage would be very different this morning had they got that. And it would have been interesting if they had won the scrum penalty, if it had been Steve, or who was it, Nakayane's, whose feet had gone from under him, and the penalty being given, and it's 3 points and you're in injury time. Do you kick it or do you go to the corner? Do you draw the series like you did 4 years ago and we get all these weird quotes about kissing her sister, or do we go and try and win it and go death to glory? That's an intangible. I'd love to, if we get Conor Murray at some stage off the record, I'd love to ask him what he would have thought, because that's a really difficult decision. Because as I said at the start, 2017 satisfied nobody, and they didn't put in place extra time or any sort of way deciding it. It was going to be a shared series again. So you don't go on a Lions tour to draw. I think you go for it.
Okay, I'd have taken the draw, but maybe that says something about me. Stephen Jones, by the way, just to go bigger picture for a second, Katie. 2 things to put to you. The refereeing debacle, I'll come to that in a second. Peter O'Reilly writes really well about that. But Stephen Jones, just on this tour, it's worth noting, he says, he talks about how much he missed the crowd, and he does say the Lions players and staff were awesome in their professionalism, and I suspect that's true. I can imagine how difficult a tour this has been for them. But he just says of the tour as a whole, the South African Rugby Union had hoped, because of their dire financial predicament pre-COVID, they had planned on this tour being worth 25 million sterling to them. In the end, all they will make is about $250,000 profit. Peanuts, he says. And he talks about the self-serving, vision-free fools who stood in the way of the tour being postponed for 1 year. And he talked about like the effect that had on the South African economy, and the pub owners and the taxi drivers and the boat owners and the various people who would have had a real chance to recover from COVID with a big Lions tour next year. He goes on to say, frankly, I hated the fact that this tour was not postponed more than I have ever hated anything else in rugby, before, during and now after it. So he's not sitting on the fence there about this thing going ahead. That's one legacy of this tour. And then Peter O'Reilly's just talking about how the refereeing situation has just gone out of control, really, and how all we're talking about here is referees. And the Razzie thing, even aside from that, it just seems like there's been so much focus on who's reffing the game, and the TMO conversations just go on and on and on forever. Like, you're talking 15 minutes plus of TMO chat per game. So your thoughts on those 2 points?
I suppose what I was thinking in the background was, rightly so, from the perspective of us reading our papers today, the focus is on what the Lions missed or could have done. But from the other perspective, and Brendan Fanning mentions this in passing in his piece in the Sindo as well, that we have to remember where South Africa have come from. And in a sense, the commercial juggernaut that's required to support high-end performance rugby was probably going to be a source of resistance to rescheduling the Lions tour. And I guess that's maybe where Stephen Jones is coming from, Joe. And Brendan Fanning talked about the hours that South Africa have put in together over the last few years, of course, culminating in the Rugby World Cup, and then defending almost that reputation for the Lions tour and their belief in the system. And Erasmus has been absolutely critical to that as well. I guess there's a case to be said that he's used certainly the participatory forms of social media to as much of his advantage as he could within the rules, quote unquote, and that has led to much of focus obviously on the officials as well. But broadly speaking, on the field of play, I think you would have to say that there weren't too many decisions where we would have felt we were robbed, quote unquote. And I agree with you that had everybody come to the end of this and it potentially could have been a draw on the third test, there would have been a lot of people, I think, that would have said, well, yeah, on balance, because it wasn't the most exciting or flair-driven form of rugby. But that does draw attention, I think, to the extent to which those commercial imperatives and the bid system that goes on for these big events, the Lions being one and the Olympics, of course, being much bigger again, that you're building for that for maybe 4 years, in the case of the Olympics, 8 and often 12 years now. And the financial impetus that's built into those bids makes it almost impossible to consider rescheduling because of the extent to which there's so many things that are interwoven into it.
Rory O'Connor, I'm not sure which year it was. I do remember leaving Croke Park with my Mayo parents. Needless to say, Mayo had lost in an All-Ireland final, and coming across you, Dublin, all Dublin and happy after one of the finals. So I was curious for your thoughts on Colin O'Rourke's piece here. He's previewing the Mayo-Dublin game. Dreams and reality collide for Mayo. Effectively, he's pretty much saying, look, Dublin are going to win this game. They still have 4 or 5 of the best players in the country, and they'll be really motivated by this challenge. But the way he talks about how Dublin are navigating their way through football at this stage, I'm curious for you as a Dublin fan to get your take. So he says, one of the problems at the moment for most teams against Dublin is they're so good at keeping possession that they might just hold on to the ball in their own half. This is if they get ahead, by the way. Anyway, he says, no matter what rule changes are envisaged, there is nobody who could have foreseen where football has ended up, a sort of bad basketball. He says, Dublin have now managed to bore the pants off their own followers. Their style has changed appreciably over the last couple of years, whereas once they were very enjoyable to watch, now there is little excitement. It's a mortal sin for any Dublin player to try and score unless it's a near certainty. 5 or 6 wides is all they ever have, and there's no shooting unless it's within a certain area. Paul Mannion used to kick skyscrapers from the right wing. There now appears to be a complete ban on those attempts. Dublin punch the opposition into their computer and work out how much they want to be ahead at the last water break. They stick on a few points, then they give up attacking, just holding onto the ball. Doesn't sound all that nice to be a Dublin supporter, if that's what you're being subjected to. There is some truth in that, though. I mean, I was watching the Kildare match, obviously. There is a degree of Dublin now just so, I guess, assured in their approach. And there's like a rhythm to how they dismantle opponents. And like when the keep ball starts with 10 minutes to go or 15 minutes to go, you kind of think, okay, we're done here.
Yeah, and I have to say I was there last Sunday as a fan, and I didn't enjoy it really, apart from being back in Croke Park, and even that wasn't that comfortable because people were. It was much. I've been to the Aviva for the Bows games, and I've been to Croker for the Dubs, and the Dubs felt much less COVID safe, for want of a better phrase. People are much closer to you, and it's a much bigger crowd. I think, yeah, Conor Rourke is struggling because I think he wants to say that Dublin gets, I don't know, does he come close enough? But that Dublin are finished. But if you've been saying that the machine that they've, that's built around them and the funding and the finances makes everything unfair, it's very hard to admit that suddenly Dublin are vulnerable now, and they don't have the machine. It seems to have stopped working because the bench isn't as strong as it once was. And the real crux, Dublin's just as well. We have Kellie Harrington, because at the moment our main dilemma is, who do we lose to? Is it Kerry or Mayo? That's the difficult part. Who do we hand this over to? Mark O'Shea has a good line in his intro. He says, how do you know when a great team is at its end? It's easy, really, because you end up attending your own funeral. And he goes back to the 2010 exit to Down for Kerry, and the day they realised that they were gone as a team. And that day is coming, I think, for this Dublin team. And it was always going to come at some stage. And Cluxton was the final nail in the coffin. And it's just a matter of who knocks them off. Who finally realises. And Kildare, I think, had an opportunity last Sunday, and just for whatever reason seemed just determined to keep the score to a certain point rather than go and win the game. Daniel Flynn aside. And O'Rourke's right about the style of play. It's really just uninspiring. It's methodical. It's robotic. Kildare conceded the kickoffs to Comerford, so we gave it to he took the easy option every time, and I can understand that because it was there, and give it to the corner back, and you can negotiate your way through the lines. But Cluxton would have gone for it a few times. He would have just put one up there. They've lost Howard from their half forward line because he's gone back to fill the gaps in the half back line, so that one of their big ball winners is gone. But there's no jeopardy there. There's no chance of breaking it through. And they never looked like scoring a goal until the one that was disallowed towards the end. And unless they've been holding something back, we've had the COVID incident. There's kind of a sense of kind of unspoken acrimony around that. There's just something not looking right about them at the moment. And I think O'Shea goes closer to saying they're ready to be knocked off than O'Rourke does. But I think they're both thinking it, really. And I think everyone in football is. And for the sport, it's probably his time. We had someone who even a Dub can admit that.
Well, O'Rourke does ultimately, I think Dublin will beat Mayo and is not giving Mayo much of a chance here. He says Dublin still have the 4 or 5 best players in the country, and he says they'll be really motivated by this challenge, and there's no love lost between the counties. He thinks Dublin will be far more direct than in their previous 2 games this year. They'll go hunting for goals. But Katie, Rory used the word methodical there. It's funny, I was reading this piece on Dublin, and I guess boring is the blunt word that O'Rourke is kind of avoiding using. And I was just thinking, Barcelona got the same kind of stuff thrown at them, or Spain did a little bit, where they could just almost, with their brilliance, just apply a certain deadness to the games. There was no jeopardy. There was nothing alive about the game. It was completely in their grasp, and they were very comfortable. And that, unfortunately, is about 99% of Dublin games over the last number of years. Their style has certainly... they would say it's more refined, but it has certainly evolved over the last year, a couple of years, into something less exciting for us.
Why would you change something that up to now has been working, broadly speaking, Joe? So, I would imagine the view from inside the Dublin camp is a little bit more nuanced.
Yeah. We're talking here as spectators. What they're doing is brilliant, and the way they strangled the game against Kildare by keeping the ball, it's exactly the right thing to do. In the same way Barcelona keeping the ball and Spain keeping the ball was exactly the right thing to do. I'm talking solely as spectator here. I think O'Rourke is coming at it from the point of view of spectator. I don't think he's saying it's ineffective.
No, and I appreciate what Rory said as well. As a spectator, it would be good to see a change at the top, because it will add a little bit more interest back into the games overall. But Pat Spillane takes a slightly different view, Joe, in the Sunday World. He says he thinks Dublin are coming to the boil before.
Right.
And he raises the question of whether it'll be the Mayo team that was opened up at will by Galway in the first half of the Connacht final, or whether they will have now developed more of that mental resolve. Because their last championship win over Dublin was in the 2012 All-Ireland semi-final. He says Mayo have the pace, the power, the personal strength to take down Dublin next Saturday evening. But the caveat is they have to play the game on their terms, forcing Dublin to doubt themselves.
And what's your sense? By the way, I haven't mentioned your football or rugby credentials, by the way, apologies. So what's your sense of where Dublin are then? It's interesting to see that split opinion with Spillane and, say, O'Shea and O'Rourke.
Yeah, I get the sense that Dublin are going to be able to do more, I think, than they're being given credit for at the moment. Now, when it gets potentially to the cut and chase of this, a Kerry at the other end. I mean, my footballing credentials have to go that Kerry direction, Joe. And equally, when it comes to hurling end, and this is going to be confusing to some of the listeners, it goes the Limerick end, because of course I'm born in West Limerick, but I played Gaelic football for Kerry. But I agree with Pat Spillane. I think there's a little bit more in the tank from Dublin, and it is coming to the boil, but it's going to be very much about that context. As a spectator, I have to say I agree with you in terms of the enjoyment levels that come from seeing more, let's call it more free-flowing football. And there are times, I admit, when I find myself wishing that there was more of an emphasis on free-flowing, less of the kind of basketball ethos that Colin O'Rourke describes in the game. But having been through that at my end, in terms of high-performance sport, they're definitely building for something inside that camp. That's my gut instinct.
Yeah, it does raise like the ultimate tension as well, Katie. In all sports, really, like the very conservative South African approach, the way Dublin are playing now, like what is most effective at times is not necessarily the best for spectators. And sport initially, the rules were devised, with a sense of competition in mind, and tactics were applied to win. Tactics are never there really to put on a show for spectators, and yet obviously you sort of need spectators to enjoy it, for the sport to thrive. And there's always a tension there at heart. Like South Africa, do they care that the rugby world is saying, God, they don't play any rugby, they barely pass to Cheslin Colby? I doubt they are, and yet that conversation is happening, and every spectators and participants just have a very different emphasis when it comes to sport, and that tension's always there, and it's probably there with Dublin at the moment.
It is, and that journey from the kind of initial amateur ethos right through to what we have today, Joe, inbuilt in all of that in between are the changes in rules and regulations that have happened over time. And for instance, it happened in the Premiership as well, where there was a change from the number of points awarded for a win. Many of those rules and regulations are actually designed with the intention of trying to equalise the playing field, but heighten the tension. And what it does, of course, is that it then frames the extent to which, at the high performance level today, you have the analysts and the coaches working within those rules and regulations to eke out the best way for a win.
Like I don't think, Rory, any coaching ticket have sat down the day after the game and said, but were we entertaining enough?
Well, particularly in amateur sport, they've no obligation to. I think in a professional sport like rugby, which not maybe in South Africa, but in many of the countries that it's played, it's not a majority sport. There is an obligation to safeguard your future by entertaining the people who pay your bills. But in Gaelic games, there certainly isn't. I mean, winning the All Ireland is all Dessie Farrell is contracted if even he has a physical contract to do so. I don't think that's his main be all end all. Dessie Farrell was on loads of entertaining teams that failed to win at the end of the day, and that were involved in classic games that came up short. So I'm sure he's been hardened by that experience. And I think Dublin are more entertaining when the opposition engages them in the way that Mayo and Kerry will. And those games, if they end up overcoming Mayo, I think that they will leave us with they'll be like Russell Crowe and Gladiator saying, "Are you not entertained?" Because they always rise to those occasions, and they won't give it up easy. I still want them to go on and do it. I mean, I as a fan, I want the team to come and engage them, and I want them to overcome that challenge. But I do think this is probably the year where it happens. I think this is it'd be classic Mayo to beat Dublin and lose to Kerry in the end, wouldn't it? I mean, to finally get over the hill, they'll need to find the mountain waiting for them.
Yeah. And I totally agree with that point. I think part of the problem here is Dublin gets so clear midway through a second half that they don't need to score again. So keeping the ball makes perfect sense. Killing the game makes sense. Whereas Mayo and Kerry will push them, and I'm sure Dublin will keep on coming down. Katie, you picked out, a couple of other GAA stories. I didn't get a chance to read these just with Kellie Harrington and everything going on this morning. Is there anything you want to point people towards, rather?
Yeah, just very briefly, Joel. There's a really nice feature piece, if you will, on goalkeeping as such. It's almost a double-page feature, but it's one side this is the Sunday Times, David Clarke, and then picking up as well on the kind of goalkeeping technique within Monaghan at the moment. But it's a really nice reflective piece on his career, and the extent to which he tries to make sense of the fact that he never got that All-Ireland medal. But there's a nice balance in the context of, other things that become more important to him as his career progresses, the extent to which he managed injury, the challenge of never being, I suppose, comfortable or always comfortable as the first choice, number one, and what that brought to the coaching and the competitive ethos within Mayo as well. And it's a nice build-up, I think, hopefully to from a Mayo perspective, what might be a successful outcome for them.
Yeah, I must read that afterwards, David Clarke. Is he, how does he reconcile having this amazingly, I suppose, interesting, exciting 20s and 30s and playing with people, who are friends for life versus not getting over the line? Is he ultimately retiring happy, or does he say it's a massive regret?
Yeah, he says it would be nice to know what it would have felt like to win an All-Ireland. You'd feel a bit unfilled, but you can think about it too much too. I'm still happy with what I got out of my career. I had a great time, even outside of football. There were great learnings as a person, but maybe it was the way I was brought up. I always wanted to be known as someone who did things right. And then this is a piece by Christy O'Connor, so it's page 24 and 25 of the Sunday Times. And O'Connor finishes by saying that precious medal was never going to define who Clarke was and what he stood for. His splendour was bound up in his brilliance and endurance. His obsessive quest was marked by grace and dignity and perseverance of never giving up, of never giving in, and that was the real gold. And I think O'Connor is able to conclude that on the basis of having spoken to Clarke as well. So I didn't get a strong sense of something lost or a sense of regret, Joe. But you can enjoy the read afterwards.
Yeah. Rory, I know you were fully prepared to give out about the lack of acknowledgement of Bohemians in Europe, and then alas, your rant was scuppered.
Yeah, no, good piece by Aidan Fitzmaurice on kind of it's nothing too long, but it sums up the week that was. I mean, amidst all of this incredible Irish achievement in global sport, to have Rovers, Bows and Dundalk going unbeaten in the Europa Conference League this week against high calibre opposition, particularly in the case of Bows and Dundalk, it has been just a really, really good week for Irish football. And I'd hoped, I kind of opened the papers more and hoped an expectation that, because of everything that's going on, which I completely understand, that it would be covered, because we're in the middle of, basically it's half time in these three legs, and there's a real chance that we'll have three representatives in the final qualifying round in the week after next if they can complete the job. And it's happening behind, I know you had Dan on during the week and he went through really well, but the Aviva Stadium on Tuesday was truly, truly special. It was just an incredible night to see a young Irish football team to go out and, not quite play a team with a budget of 65 million off the park, but to deserve their win was a really stirring thing. Emer Lam was there, the Olympic medalist as well, which was great to see from Cabra.
Yeah. I think your Wi-Fi is letting us down.
And sometimes gets forgotten on Sundays, so it is worth a look.
Okay, you're back. Perfect. Yeah, I totally agree on what's going on in Irish football right now, Rory. We're potentially here at a tipping point. If we can get Irish clubs winning in Europe and these games at the Aviva Stadium routinely, this thing could really take a quantum leap. It's either a delay or you're not hearing me. The joys of technology. Gone. Apologies, Rory O'Connor there. His Wi-Fi has given up at the death. Katie, listen, we are pretty much done. We're pretty much out of time. Rory had also picked out a Premier League preview, but frankly, I just can't just yet. We'll give that another week. We need more of a break. It was pretty good, the Premier League preview, but it just seems, I can't believe we're back already. Community Shield yesterday. Thanks to Rory O'Connor of the Irish Independent and Dr. Katie Liston. Thanks a million, Katie. Great having you on.
Cheers, Joe.
We will take a very short break. We'll bring you news headlines, and Tommy Welch is on the way next from Croke Park.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.